Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So, do guitar amps still matter in 2025? Well, the reason I'm doing this video is I'm kind of getting the impression that they don't anymore. In this day and age of IRs and amp modelling, you don't actually need a guitar amp anymore. I've been involved with bands recently, silent stages, in-ear monitoring. You've got a guitar pedal which has got IRs built in, amp modelling built in. You go straight to the PA. Flat response, full frequency, or whatever they're called, FR speakers. Guitar amps are going down in price. The demand is lessening for guitar amps, especially valve guitar amps. So I just wanted to just give you my thoughts on the situation, really, because I really don't want to see guitar amps disappear. What's next? Guitars disappearing. We've replaced guitar amps. What's next? Who knows where we're going to go? In the age of AI and all that stuff, right? So I just want to go through. I'll give you 5, maybe 6 reasons why I think guitar amps do actually still matter, still mean something to me anyway. These are just my own personal opinions in 2025. But before I start, if you're enjoying the content, please do subscribe to the channel, Guitar Jody. It really helps us out. I really appreciate it if I can get up to that 1,000 subscriber mark. Thanks for your help. It's free. It takes a second. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anyway, right. So reason number 1, right? The most obvious, of course, is tone. Right now, amp modelling has tried to replicate the sound of guitar amps over the years. For recording, what I do is I do use guitar apps on the iPad to try and recreate that, just because the whole faff about of making a guitar amp, it going through an audio interface. I think you do lose something anyway, unless you're a really skilled engineer, with expensive equipment and mics, right? So for recording, I have sort of moved away from guitar amps, right? But what I will say is, and this is actually one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, is I've been messing about with sort of guitar apps. Check out the other videos. Did a few reviews for guitar amps, and one day I just got set up with this guitar amp, clean channel, and just and then I realised something. I realised that amp modelling, IRs, are never going to be able to replicate that. The tone of just whacking that open A chord, you feel it in the room, right? And it's authentic, it's real, it is real, right? It's a real guitar going into a real guitar amp, a real valve guitar amp. This is my Marshall DSL1 valve amp, right? And as soon as I played that, I kind of realised, I'm not going to get rid of this, right? Because modelling does not replace that sound, that feeling that you get when you hit that A chord. The authenticity that's, amp modelling is trying to replicate. I don't think 1s and 0s are going to ever replace analog guitar amps. So that's the first reason. Of course, all this is very subjective. It's all opinions. People have said, try and do an A/B test and blindfold, see if you can spot the difference, right? It's the feeling. It's the feeling that you get. And going on to point number 2, right? It's the immediacy of the attack, right? There's no latency involved here. We're not messing about with, latency settings and processor speeds and all that stuff that just kills the buzz completely. The immediacy and the response that you get, from a guitar and and especially a valve amp. It's so immediate, you know, it's so organic, right? You can't replicate that. It's that you know, from the initial transient, yeah, the initial attack, right, to the sustain, in the decay, and everything, right? That, to me, that cannot be replicated with ones and zeros ever, right? I think it's impossible. And you know, and I've tried these new neural amp modelers and all that stuff, that, you know, it uses AI and machine learning to analyze sound spectrums and all that stuff. It's close, but you're missing those nuances, I think, in all parts of the note, from its initial attack, the initial transient, all the way through. It's missing something. It's just not the same, right? It's like, you know, it's like a pot noodle compared to preparing a meal from scratch, right? That's what it's like. It's just, guitar amps are instant gratification. This is the real thing. This is the real thing, right? It's an emotional subject, I know. You know, I know it's not black and white. You know, it's very subjective, but these are just my feelings on it. So number 3 is the simplicity and the control that you get with a real guitar amp. So by control, what I mean is, you know, say for example, if you wanted to go for a no amp setup, right? So you want to get an effects pedal which has got amp modeling and IOs built in, you're going to go straight to the PA, right? Now, to me, you're kind of at the mercy of the sound engineer at that point, right? I mean, you're going to have your own monitoring setup. You might have like an FR speaker for your monitor, but I think it's going to be very complex and more difficult to get a sound that you like, you know, with your what's all this with in-ears? You know, it's like a silent disco to me, that you want to be able to hear the guitar amp in the room, right? You don't want to be hearing it in your headphones. I think that's silly. Thousands and millions will probably disagree, but that's my personal opinion. But yeah, the simplicity as well, right? So, you know, you take classic bands, you know, from the 60s, the 70s, you know, the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, they had very limited equipment to work with, and sometimes those limitations kind of feed the creativity, if you know what I mean, right? So if you're limited by the equipment, the focus is on the song and your creativity. You're not getting lost in menus and, you know, replicating all these, you know, tones, right, from a real guitar amp, by the way. You know, you've just got what you've got to work with, and you make the best of it. And I think that is often, you know, where the best product, you know, songs, creativity comes from. Limiting or limitations on the equipment. I've always thought that, right? So with this, you've got everything available at your fingertips. You haven't got to dive into menus, right? You're limited, but, you know, it's easier to get a good tone, you know, with a good valve amp than it is to have a million different tones, but they're all sound rubbish. You know, you're always going to be, I've found myself always struggling and spending more time to get a good tone with modelers and with guitar amps than I have with just plugging my guitar straight into a valve amp, and immediately you've got a good tone and you can tweak it, yeah, but the point is you're more focused on the playing, you're less focused on the actual equipment, in my opinion, right? So that's it. And number 4, so a guitar amp, funnily enough, you know, this is what it's for. It's for amplifying an electric guitar. That's its goal, that's its job. It's one job, right? That's all it's doing, right? That is what it's for, okay? That's what it's designed to do, right? And it performs that job perfectly, right? So if it ain't broke, why fix it? Yeah. I mean, you know, you look at some of these effects pedals with modelers. You know, the multifunction. You know, you can use them for recording. You can use them for live work. They've got millions of effects on them. You know, you use them as multi-effects units as well as your, you know, an amp in a box. You know, but this thing here is just designed to amplify my guitar or your guitar. And sometimes, you know, when you've got a tool for the job, it performs it perfectly, and I think it does. Why change it? Yeah. So number 5 is, you know, the guitar amp. Some people tend to spend more money on the amp than they would the guitar, because the guitar amp is an instrument in itself, right? It's the foundation of the tone. Some people would argue it's more of a foundation in your tone than the actual guitar. Yeah. So I mean, some, you know, classic guitar amp tones throughout the years, you know, Marshall, you know, Hendrix, you know, Slash. I mean, then, you know, kind of more recently, like, you know, like Mark Tremonti with, you know, Mesa Boogies and rectifiers and stuff like that. You know, those are not necessarily guitar tones, those are amp tones, right? Yeah, so it's an instrument. I mean, you know, you couldn't say that about modelers that have got their own distinctive, legendary tones. They're just mimicking other things. Why not just have the real thing? Just my opinion. You know, so I really don't want to see guitar amps go. You know, I've seen the prices go down. We need to use these things, or we're going to lose them forever. We're going to be stuck with modelers that are mimicking real things from the past. These are real things. This is real life. This is plugging a guitar and moving air. You know, this is not a cabinet simulator. This is a cabinet. It's not a speaker simulator. It's an actual speaker. Where do we go from here? You know, do we go virtual guitars? Oh, it sounds the same as a guitar. So why not? Why have a guitar? Are we really going to go down that road? You know, just a few more thoughts I had on that. Yeah, I think that's about it. Really, I don't want to rant on too much, but I think, you know, most of all, point number 6, I guess, is, you know, getting the guitar amp out and plugging a guitar into it. It's just fun, right? And to be honest with you, you know, setting up a modeler and then saying, oh, well, I'm going to have a Fender tone here, or we're going to have a that's, to me, that isn't fun. You know, it's like it's trying to fix a problem. You know, I want a guitar sound. I haven't got a Marshall. How am I going to get a Marshall sound? I'm going to try and find it in this piece of software, right? Or I could just go upstairs, bring this downstairs, and then just do that, and then go. And there's no artifacts, and there's no weird sounds, and there's no unexpected decays and unexpected noise and digital artifacts. It just sounds like what it is, and it's a guitar, a real guitar going into a real guitar valve amp. And I'm waffling, so I think that's going to be the end of the video. So like I say, thanks for watching, thanks for liking, thanks for subscribing. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, I really appreciate it. Guitar amps are getting so cheap these days. My advice to you is just pick one up. Pick one of these up. I'll drop a link if you want to support the channel. I'll drop a couple of affiliate links in the description and the comments. Pick one up. It's like you can get these for around £200 or something now. You know, a real valve amp. Anyway, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.